Next subtopic to cover here, multiple classes in one Java file. So we say that every Java file name corresponds to the public class that is stored inside that Java file, and that's just the rule for naming files, source files in Java. That's just something that we need to be able to do, otherwise compiler will not be very happy with our naming. But in addition, you can have more than one class in a Java file. Okay, so here's a demonstration of it. Is that, for instance, here's a class named line item. Apparently, this could be used for an invoice or a purchase order or something, right? Something that needs to itemize something, so this specific line item includes a product that it's referencing, the quantity of that, items, and perhaps it could also include the unit of measurement for the quantity. It could be, pounds or gallons or barrels or whatever, and then of course there's the total amount for this specific item, and so this is very natural. So we have a file named lineitem.java, but at the same time we can have more classes in this file, and you can have only one public class inside a Java file. But you can have classes with non-public visibility. Of course, the default visibility for a product like this would be, for class product, stored inside other class Java file, would be a package-wide visibility, but it's no longer public, so it can be placed in the same file. This is typically done only with classes clearly that are part of the same component, that are essentially classes, so that some classes can be given less visibility in the application, and they could be made essentially private classes or package level classes inside, hosted by other Java files. But the name of the Java file is required to be the name of the public class, and public class typically would appear at the top of that specific file. You also know that we do also have interfaces. So interface is another keyword in Java that could give name to a Java file, because we can say public interface and specify the interface and give the name to an interface, and then it would still reside in that interface name .java, right? So that would be the situation with that. But with classes, you can have more than one class in the same file. Now, when you generate, when we generate those, or compile our classes, of course the class files are produced for us. And if I go back to my project, here's my package jar, or let's package jar. The jar file is Java archive file, but if you go to one of the archive utilities and say open archive, as you can see, I'm using 7-zip, and 7-zip doesn't really hesitate to open the jar file, because it has a format very similar to zip file, and it maintains the same structure. And inside this zip file, you can see that what I have is a set of class files, and the names of class files correspond to the name of the initial Java file. There's also the subfolder. Let me go back to this level. Basically, there's a README file. There's also a Java doc. Since we already have Java doc is included here. By default, jar includes the Java doc so that people can see it and use it. But in this jar file, I'm sorry, I already jumped out of my jar file one more time. right here, 7-zip, open archive. There's a subfolder which uses the manifest, and the manifest is basically a textual description of the content of this specific jar file. So this is just like an internal directory of everything contained in this jar file. Okay, so when we use multiple classes in the same file, a single Java file may yield multiple class files, right? So in a situation like this, we have a product nested inside line item.java, and you can see that what gets generated is product.class and line item.class. Just to tell you what will be happening during the runtime. You still, of course, every class gets its unique name and .class extension. Classes can also be nested inside other classes, right? So here's the outer class. It's a public class, and if I wanted to use a class, another class only inside this outer class that I've just created, then I can simply declare, just say class, and declare another class in scope of already existing class, right? So this becomes just a normal class. And as you can see, the comments here do say that you can have normal instance variables and methods. However, there is a limitation on the inner class. It cannot have static variables or methods. Okay, whereas the normal class declared at the file level can have both instance level and static variables and methods. The inner class declared just like this is limited only to instance variables and methods. Okay. Now it also can access anything inside the outer class. So it's sort of like magically says, oh, I'm already in scope of this outer class, so if there is a data piece or if there is a method inside this outer class name, it will just have access to that magically. It just can call that by method name as if the code was written directly in a method of the outer class. So this is your example of an inner class name. However, if you're working on the utility class and you have some static data and some static methods, which is not uncommon, right? That's very much an intent, a possibility. You can also create an inner class and declare it static. Okay. Once you declare static, of course, it does extend so that it can also contain. It can also access static variables and methods of the outer class. However, it cannot access the instances and variables and methods of the outer class. But as a reward, you will then be allowed to contain instance variables and methods. Okay, so that's kind of like that the restriction over here, which says you can contain static variables or methods, is lifted. So this is something the design methods of using nested classes or even classes that are declared in the same file, which are non-public classes, or these nested classes, those would be typically done for classes which are very closely related. For example, you can have a container object and a helper object which is named an iterator, right? So we already know that, for instance, with map containers in other generic containers in Java, you get sometimes you can get a helper object which is an iterator, which allows you to visit every single item inside your map or hash map, for example. And with that respect, sometimes an iterator could be made an inner class and it would just return itself from a specific method, or it can be placed in the same class just so that it has a very special meaning in the project. And for instance, having an iterator without a container is actually meaningless. In fact, it's even dangerous, because iterator makes sense only when there is a specific container and that iterator is pointing to that specific container. So it wouldn't be unusual to place the code for the iterator class in the same class as the container class. So that would be your example. So, and when you have inner classes, the files that are generated, the class files with the compiled bytecode, right? So obviously the outer class gets its standard class name. For the outer class name, I'm sorry, for the inner and static inner, you get their names which use the $sign in their name, right? So there will be files like this. We can experiment with this very quickly. Let's just do some demo code with that.